So my name is Phil Johnston, and I've probably been, I would say, maybe an entrepreneur, but a new business creator for probably 10 years now. I started fresh out of university, and this is a bit about my path, my progress. I kind of went the opposite direction that many entrepreneurs in the US have, where I came from university to entrepreneurship and then to big companies, and then kind of doing entrepreneurship on the side. So I want to quickly kind of give you an overview about what I'm going to talk about. There's a fourth point on here, which is more just kind of open discussion for you guys. But first, a quick bit about myself. So former university student, like many of you. This is not such an important point for many in the US. My stepfather did not graduate university. He went to 2 years, so he would be considered a sophomore. But he has gone on to since be CTO and founder of different companies, but also taking different companies public. So education is important, probably more important for getting a job with a big company. But for the smaller companies, they're interested in it, but they're not, it's not a true hard requirement. So I went to a place called University of Portland, and I also spent a year in Austria, in a little town called Graz, which is kind of south down by Slovenia. While I was at University of Portland, I attended a program called the Entrepreneur Scholars Program. And what this was is it's a year-long opportunity to travel. So I went to Vietnam, and I went to New York, and I went up and down the West Coast to interview entrepreneurs, but also just business people, and learn about how they operate and how they view the world. And kind of my conclusion out of that, it was they all operated very differently, they all view the world very differently, but they all had passion. And so that's one of the important points that I want to convey to you today, is this kind of concept of passion. This program I still advise. I am very good friends with the person who runs this program. It's a nationwide program at many different universities, where the topic is to teach entrepreneurship and to show young people that they can be entrepreneurs if they really would like to be. But more importantly, get them out into the world so that they can see how people are operating and how they approach different topics and problems. So after I left university, I went straight to the venture capital world. I was a computer science student, but I went and I became a financial kind of analyst for this company. Turns out it's not too hard. Sorry if there's any accountants in here, but I picked it up pretty quick. I quickly became the advisor to a portfolio of companies for technology and also for how to kind of create their business models. Usually it's a pretty simple process, but from a technology perspective, they had a lot of problems. And so the business model part was a little bit smaller part of my role, but the technology was more important. So it was outsourcing to different companies. It was finding the right technology for the problems that they were approaching. It was advising our venture partners on which companies to invest in and trying to figure out which companies actually had real technology or which ones maybe just pulled together some open source and they had nothing that was of true value. After that, I spent a year there, and then I founded a technology payments company, which means that we built infrastructure to process credit cards and debit cards and gift cards and reward cards, and you name it, we did it. Our intent there was to become the PayPal for companies that didn't want to use PayPal anymore. It's a strange idea because PayPal is accepted worldwide and it has a very strong brand. But our intent was to say, okay, you can have all of the functionality of a PayPal, but you can put your brand on top of it. And so we built this brand that was only for B2B, but our customers used their own brand as if they were PayPal. So some of them called it some crazy names, but some of them, most of the time, just used our actual, our payment branding. I did that for about 5 years, and then I sold that company, and I actually consulted for about a year, took a break, hung out with my soon-to-be wife, and then I joined BMW. BMW had an office, or has an office, in Silicon Valley. This is very common for automotive manufacturers. They have, they call them research and technology offices, where they conduct research. Sometimes it's just to have close discussions with companies in Silicon Valley, whether they're Twitter or Facebook or maybe other automotive companies even. It's kind of an open forum for them to learn more about what's happening in technology and then take that back to their kind of their home company and integrate it into the products. So BMW was actually the first company to have a research office, or first automotive company to have a research office in the Bay Area. And they started back in 1997, I think it was. And they had a very small office with a number of different researchers. But they would also make sure that they had a number of local hires who were people who were from the area who were well connected. Sometimes they were students. Other times they were people like myself who was looking for something different to do but had a very large network and a very different perspective on the automotive industry. And so they hired me on. I quickly took over this group called the BMW App Center, which is an application integration program where we would work with companies like Pandora and Audible and GoPro and Mog and Stitcher, which are a number of different iPhone applications for the most part, where we would have an SDK and we would give it out to our partners. We would build a UI that would show up in the car. And so you can actually use all of these different applications from within the car's infotainment system. So if you wanted to maybe take a photo with your GoPro, or to start playing some music on Spotify, or you wanted to do some sort of location-based application, you could do that from the vehicle itself. So I did that for about 3 years, and then one of my partnerships was GoPro. I had a very strong interest in doing different partnerships, where a lot of our colleagues who are back in Munich were interested in the next Spotify or the next Audible or the next Pandora, where I wanted to use the technology different in the car and create new use cases for infotainment. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the GoPro world. So I'm currently at GoPro. I'm a director. I'm in a group called Strategic Product Partnerships. And what we do is we work with large companies, kind of like I did at BMW, but on the opposite side, to integrate our products into their products. So whether it's automotive, or maybe it's a drone manufacturer, or maybe it's some application for iPhone or Android, we work with those companies to conduct those integrations. And so also on the side, I advise. So I advise my old company that I sold. I advise my school. I advise the business school, even though I'm a computer science student. And then I also do consulting on the side. And I have an iPhone application that I put out as well. But kind of going into my first topic today, which is, I think, probably the most important thing for me to convey to anybody else who's interested in starting a new business. And that's making sure that what you are going to be doing, you are passionate about. Because if you're kind of interested in it, it's not going to work out. You have to have a true passion for it. You need to say, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life towards this. And you need to make sure that it's who you are, and it's who you want other people to be as well. But you also need to be committed. So this is a quick snapshot of what my days were like for 5 years straight. So I worked 6 days a week. I always tried to take Sunday off, go do some exercise, get out of the office, go relax for a little bit. One interesting thing is that I was paid. Sometimes I wasn't paid. Most of the time I wasn't paid very much. So that's also a side note for you, is that if you can, pay yourself. It's very important because it will keep you engaged in the business. And the more that you can pay yourself, the more engaged you will be. But I took very little for vacation. I had 10 days total over 5 years. And that's also an important point. I kind of wish I would have taken more vacation to kind of step away from the business and be able to look at it from the outside perspective. And then I worked very long days, which I'm sure this is very familiar for all of you here. But looking back on that, you're creating something. You're creating your passion, and you're trying to share that with other people. And so if you are not into that passion, if you are not truly passionate about this topic, it will show. And your potential investors will see it. Your friends and family will see it as well. And then over time, you will become very tired. So it's very important to be doing what you love, what you truly love, and not what you think will make the most money. Because usually if you are doing what you truly love, then the opportunities will present themselves. And then you will make your own markets, and then you will be able to define an industry. So, as I just said, what I found myself doing all of the time was this kind of researching the topic, was planning for the topic, constantly trying to figure out how I was going to execute on this topic and how to make it better, how to make make the business better, but also make the product better. And I also found that if I wasn't enjoying it, something was wrong. And so I needed to kind of retool, refocus, reconsider what I was actually doing. It's very important that you're enjoying what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying for an extended period of time, maybe like 6 months or so, you should reconsider, try to find something that you truly enjoy. One of the things that my wife always makes fun of me, this is my wife as well, that I constantly talk about cars, and as I'm showing people videos and things like that. What you guys are doing here is you're starting new businesses, and the passion that will create that business only comes from you. And you need to make sure that that your business is like a mirror image of you. And if you're happy and people see that you're excited about it, they're going to want to join you. They're going to want to give you as much money as they possibly can because they see that passion. This is something that I've seen at GoPro. The head of our company, Nick Woodman, is truly passionate about surfing and motorsports. It's his life. He has, I don't know how many race cars. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how many surfboards. I don't even want to know that. But really, you can see it in his life when he gets one of our products, he's going to go test it. He just goes surfing, or he goes out to the track and uses it on a car to make sure that it lives up to his passion, to his expectations. And one of the reasons that GoPro is so successful is because he's so passionate about the product, but it's not necessarily the product itself, it's the experience. And he wants to share that experience with other people. And the product is just a tool to be able to do that. And so his vision is realized in the form of a product, and his passion is also realized in this form of a product. But then he's always sharing videos with us all the time. He's like, okay, dude, I've seen you surfing enough now. So. Also, passions change. Did you? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Nice. Which one do you have?
3+.
3+.
Yeah.
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you wish it could do? What? Fly? Soon. one of the important things to realize is that passions also change. For me, my passion was venture capital and investment, and out of that came technology payments, or payments technology. So building the infrastructure that allows people to conduct transactions over the internet. That was my passion for a good long time, and I kind of realized at the end of it that I was more interested in cars and motorsports, so which caused me to start looking for other opportunities. And truthfully, I started looking into trying to start a car company. And then I realized it cost about $1 billion to launch any normal car company. And I wasn't that interested in it, but I did want to do motorsports stuff, which is how I got hooked up with BMW. And that has kind of set me down this different path, but it's also a good path. It's just different from where I started. I can go all day about credit card processing and transaction processing, stored value, and loyalty. If you are interested, let me know. But if you want to talk about cars, I'm also really into cars as well. I'm going to leave you with this quote from Richard Branson, and I couldn't find the original because it's in a book somewhere. But basically, he was talking about how he was running into a very difficult part of his life, and he realized that if he couldn't look himself in the mirror, and it's been 6 months that he can't do that, then he needs to make a change. And I would be very frank with yourself to say, okay, is this something that brings you pleasure, brings you passion, brings you happiness? Make sure that it's something that is like that. So as I said, my passion is cars and motorsport. I don't know if you can see this too well, but this is me. I went snowboarding, of course, and I was getting off of the little kid lift, and I went face down, and I completely tore my shoulder. So this is actually me in a sling, but I was putting a roll cage in my car with a friend of mine. This is at one of the BMW events, and then I really enjoy vintage automobiles, and so this is an old Jaguar that I have that has been fully restored and is a wonderful car to drive. So for me, I was doing this kind of already, and this passion started to take over my life, much more so than anything else that I had been focusing on to that date, I would say. Literally, when I'm preparing for a race or a track day or anything, I'm 110% focused for 18 hours a day. So definitely prepping, planning, researching, trying to figure out the best way to drive the track, but also to prepare my car, to work on the car, to find the right tools, to find everything there is to know about motorsport and racing. And then I go to the track, and then it's another 18-hour days, very long, of doing the same thing, but actually experiencing that passion. And from that, you start to identify opportunities, and you start to identify the pain points, because if you are participating with other people, those people will also have similar pain points. And if you start talking to them and realize that there's no solution for those pain points, then you've found a market. You've also found a market that you're passionate about and that you will really focus on to make sure that a good product is presented to that market, and possibly one that people want to pay for, so which is a pretty good thing too. So for me, leading up to all of my track activities was searching for a new race car. I knew that this car was going to cost a lot of money to turn into a full race car. And so I needed to find a cheaper way to be able to do that. And so there's a classified system in the US called Craigslist. It's also all here, but not as popular. But in the US, there's pretty much all the cars that are presented for sale go onto this website. What I found was that just to search within California, which is where I am from, I had to have maybe 25 or 30 different tabs open to be able to search in all of the vicinity of California. And that was a real pain in the ass. And it wasn't something that I could do at work, because then I'm sitting there with my computer and have like 30 tabs that are all cars. And, so I realized this, and I started talking to friends of mine, and they said, oh yeah, you know, it kind of sucks. There's a couple websites that allow you to kind of do it, but you know, it's still painful. And I said, well, how do you end up finding these race cars? And they, well, we talked to people at the track, and it didn't seem like a very efficient method for finding the car. So I started looking into it and realized that they had an API. And so it's just a simple RSS feed where they have a REST protocol, and then I have gone through and, you know, just presented a UI so that it makes it easy to search worldwide or nationwide. But also, I'm kind of a nerd, you know, computer science, and then I did all this finance stuff, and so I'm very into statistics and graphs and trying to understand market trends. And so the intent of the application was to find a new race car, but also understand if the market for those race cars were going up and down. And then I realized that, well, this can also be used for any car, whether it's, you know, a BMW, or it's a Porsche, or, you know, just any normal car like an Opel. So I just started making the application for myself. This is a couple screenshots of what it is. And really all it's doing is it's pulling in information from all over Craigslist, presenting it back visually and sorted, removing duplicates, and then allowing me to better understand the market and try and time my purchases better. So whether it was in the winter or in the summer, maybe in the fall. But it was my passion. These are things that I was doing every day. So it turned out that I end up using my application probably more than anybody else, which is probably a good thing. But I started sharing it out to friends of mine, and everybody that I shared it out with doesn't stop using it. So it's a pretty good indicator to me that, you know, that something's here. Obviously, I'm not charging for it right now. It's kind of in beta. But just focusing on my passions produced this product. And I think this is probably a perfect illustration of what I would like to convey to you. It's like, do what you love. Whether or not you think there's a market for it, if it's a pain point that you have, chances are somebody else has that pain as well. So, you know, I was doing this every day. One of the things that I was doing was sharing these ads with all of my friends, and so I would send it out over text message or send it out over email and then get all this feedback. And that turned out to be one of the more important features of the application. It's very simple. But these kind of searches that I create, I could also share. And so people were very interested in that, because crafting an appropriate search just to find a 911 from 1995 is kind of difficult on that website. So, the other thing is the engaging part. I find that all of my friends are using it multiple times a day for like 20 minutes at a time, which means that there's probably something there about engagement. Maybe I have an advertising model. Maybe there's some way that I can increase the engagement as well, make it easier so that my friends can share between each other, or, you know, they find a car and they say, oh, this is really great, add some comments to it. But try and focus on what these people are already doing and then provide features for them. So I ended up making it a little bit more generic than just focusing on race cars, because it turns out that there are race cars on Craigslist. There are just not very many of them. And that's just part of the market. There's a pretty small amount of people who actually have enough money to spend to build a race car and then go run it on the weekends. But there's a much larger market for secondhand vehicles. In general, there are, I think for 2014, there are 300 million used vehicles on the road that were registered. And probably race cars is like 10,000. So for me, it was trying to find the market, figure out if the market was going up or down, so that I could get the most appropriate price for a vehicle. But my bigger passion is cars and motorsports, and so on my phone right now, there's probably 30 different searches that I'm looking at every day, and I'm trying to find new and cool ones, or random weird cars, or things that I've never seen before as well. Weird cars, yeah. Totally. What's funny is my father is actually a big user of the application. Not because it's like his son's application, but he's always looking for very strange cars. I looked for a Stoyan one time. Yugos you can find. They're actually pretty hard to find, and they're very cheap. I think a couple months ago I was looking, and there were 3 Yugos on the West Coast, so Washington, Oregon, California. And it's true. And the most expensive one was $1,500. So, but it was excellent condition. I can't multitask, so I really only focus on one thing at a time, and so I have many different topics. That's true. Yeah. Sometimes it has to do with what I'm doing in life. One of the things that I also learned along the way through my e-commerce work was that making the barriers to entry, whether it's to registering for your platform or service, or to purchasing your product, or to just getting benefit out of your product, is a very, very important thing to focus on when you're developing your product and you're iterating. So along the way, I was building a lot of payment walls, meaning that if you wanted to access content, you had to pay for something. And so we had very high, they call it attrition, so it's where you lose the customer, where basically we were just getting very few through the door and being able to purchase something through our platform. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why it was such a pain point for people. And I kind of came up with this thing called the Starters Theorem, which means that when all the stars align, then you get a paying customer. So, but it's pretty much common sense. Basically saying that for every additional requirement or step that you make for your customer, or that you make them do, the harder it is for them to get benefit out of your system, or out of your product, or out of your solution. And that benefit is where you guys will make money, and it's where your customers will become happy customers, and you want to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to do that. So just to kind of like quantify what I mean by this, these are just kind of like made up numbers, but I actually think there's some truth here, where if you make someone go through 3 different steps to be able to access your system, there's a much less likely possibility that they will be able to get through that process. Ideally, you want to get to a point where your users don't have to do anything. They just get benefit for free, or they just give you their credit card and then they just get benefit all day long. We have a model called the gym membership model, where people will pay $100 per month to think that they're being healthy. And they know that there is a building that contains exercise equipment and people who will make them more healthy. And they're happy to pay just that money to get that benefit. That's a really great model. It's also a difficult model to maintain going forward. But the idea is you want to make it as easy as possible. So as kind of a quick example of this is the credit card form. Many of you have probably seen this. This is the iTunes credit card input form. So if you want to purchase anything through iTunes, you must have a credit card on file. And it presents you with this huge list of stuff, and with the assumption that you're going to go through this entire process and get it right and put your credit card on file so that it's easier for you to purchase in the future. But they kind of they missed the mark, from my opinion. I had a credit card page that looked just like this, and I got basically nobody going through. I couldn't get customers to correctly input their credit card information, put their address in. If they were from a different country, how did we handle that situation? The problem is that their interest is getting cheaper credit card processing. So with a credit card company, the more information that you collect about a transaction, the lower the risk is. And so to the merchant, which would be iTunes in this case, their fees are cheaper if they collect all of this information. So they collect all this stuff. This is all required. If you don't put this in, you cannot proceed. And so they probably aren't losing too many customers, but they're probably losing a fair amount just due to frustration, who then either have to call into their customer support line, or they have to come back another day, or they have to get their grandchild to go input this information for them. A lot of frustration comes out of this. So the thing is that you can infer a bunch of the information for them. So this is reducing these number of steps that a user is required to do. You can do reverse lookup using their IP. You know what country they're in. That's pretty simple. Usually you can get down to the city, and it's close enough for credit card processing. For these users, they already have to be logged into the freaking system. So you probably know their first name, their last name, their salutation. So they're Mr. or Mrs. And you know their email address, which is also something that you can pass to a credit card company for making sure that you get better fees. And finally, just understanding how credit cards work. This was my problem. I didn't quite understand how credit cards really worked until I ran into this issue of not being able to receive money from my customers. A very good implementation is actually Amazon. There's 2 steps to this process, but the actual amount of information that's collected is very small. So here we just have a card number, the actual name on the card, which isn't required. And then we have an expiration date. And some credit card processors will require the expiration date, some don't. It just depends on how much you're going to get charged. But then everything else is inferred. You can, since you know a little bit about that customer, you then either select an address that you may have shipped to before, or you can add a new address and just make it as easy as possible. Actually, when you click on this add a new address, it's a little bit dumb, but it does fill in the country and it does fill in the state, which are good things to do. But that's it. Then the customer can go through and purchase, and Amazon has one of the highest conversion rates of all e-commerce. And it's not because they're the only e-commerce company, it's because they make it very easy for customers to actually pay for something. Yeah.
Did they actually patent the one-click purchase?
They did, yeah. And we ran into that problem too. But they showed that it was a true business process and as a business benefit, which is pretty impressive. And so if you want one click, you have to pay a royalty to Amazon, which is nice that they allow you to pay them rather than saying, no, you can't do it. There was a time when you could not use that, but that was about 5 or 6 years ago. So just for some quantifying. So 4 actions on Amazon, you're probably about 1 in 10,000 using my kind of Starters Theorem. For Apple, this is 1 in 10 trillion, which there's a book that my wife and I are reading right now that is kind of talking about quantifying large numbers. And 1 in 10 trillion, you have to look at this. So if you do 10,000 seconds ago is 2.8 minutes, okay? 10 trillion seconds ago is actually 5,200 years.
Oh my God.
So that is the value of making it much more simple for your users to be able to get through and receive benefit out of the system. So, for e-commerce, they're 1% to 2% conversion rates. I just pulled this number from 2014. This is real. If you want to have a florist website, it's a 40% conversion rate. So I don't know if you've heard of 1-800-flowers.com. Literally, it's 40% conversion, and it's insane. They can throw so much shit in front of you and try to get you to purchase it, and you still make that purchase because all you know is that you need to send flowers to your grandmother for her birthday. So it's pretty impressive. Kind of my final topic for today is making decisions, and it's I get a lot of questions from younger entrepreneurs. I also mentor, much like Kamini, who are presented with many opportunities and they don't know which ones to pursue. And this is true for businesses, for personal relationships, for anything. And it's a hard topic because everybody approaches it differently. And so this is kind of my perspective about how I kind of filter out which are the good decisions and which are maybe not the best decisions for me. So how do I make this the right decision? And to be honest, there isn't a right decision. There's only the right decision for you. For me, what I do is I try and very pragmatically work through all of the different options that are presented in front of me for a specific decision, and then weigh the pros and cons, like many of you do, but also figure out if it fits my passion. And so if this is something that's working towards being able to have a car or to do motorsport or to spend more time with my wife, these are very important things to me. And if it doesn't, it may be important to somebody else, but it's just not important to me at that time. And these things change over time as well. Sometimes, your passions dictate which decisions you're making. But an example of this is when I went from BMW to GoPro, I actually was entertaining different offers from different companies. And so Apple had basically the same offer to me. It was in their partnerships program, basically doing the same type of role, but a lower position, same pay, same time off, all of these things. But for me, the most important thing was how much opportunity would I have within their organization? And kind of looking at Apple, it had been around for about 30 years, and about 15,000 engineering employees. I think they have 100,000 worldwide. Where then at GoPro, they had about 800 employees at the time, full-time. They were just about to go IPO, and it was 10 years old. Actually, I don't know if anybody knows, but GoPro is about 10 years old now. And I'm sorry?
2004?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Maybe a little bit 2005-ish. Yeah, where it just started off with one person. It wasn't until about 3 years ago that they really exploded the number of employees. When my current boss, who was also my partner when I was at BMW, he was number 200 employee, and that was 3 years ago. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah. But it's also at the very beginning stages of its kind of career as a company. And so from my perspective, there was a lot more opportunity there and a lot more opportunity to grow and do things that I was interested in. It was also, cars and motorsport was a big topic with them. Being able to go from an automotive company to a consumer electronics company and basically be doing the same thing, and also be doing the same thing with automotive and motorsport, and that as one of my passions was very important to me. It turns out that there are more race teams at GoPro than at BMW, hands down. I don't know anybody who actually owned a race car or did, like bicycle races or did hang gliding or jumping out of planes or rock climbing or any of these things. I didn't know anybody who did that at BMW. But at GoPro, it was just full of people who were pursuing their passions. And that was very appealing to me because what they have, what's that? What they have really done well is collect people who follow their passions and who live their passions as well. Anyway, it was a very passionate company, and so it much more appealed to me. Can you give me some things? So another example. This is coming from the e-commerce side of my world. We were constantly approached by companies who wanted us to collect payments for porn companies, so like pornography. And we were, I wouldn't say that we were opposed to it, but we really wanted to understand the impact of pursuing this opportunity. Not all of the companies were like bad porn or whatever. It was, magazine websites that had R-rated images or whatever. But we had to really evaluate whether or not this was going to be a corporate strategy for the company. They pay very well. So 40% is what I could have charged one of these companies per each transaction. And that's a pretty good rate for them. 60% is pretty common. And the reason that a porn website gets charged like 60% of per dollar, 60 cents goes to the transaction processing company, is the amount of risk that's in that transaction. Because what happens is, the guy goes to the website, pays for the porn, and then the wife gets the credit card bill and says, "What the hell is this, honey?" And the guy says, "Oh, I don't know. It must be a fraudulent transaction." And then he calls the credit card company and says, "I don't know. I didn't make this charge." And then it goes back to the merchant. And, so there's a very high kind of, it's not fraudulent transaction rate, but it's transactions that have been declined or denied. So one of the other things is there's this visibility component. So if you, as an e-commerce company in the US, if you decide to do transaction payments for porn companies, you basically get blacklisted. And there's only a few different companies that will actually work with you. And a large percent of that transaction actually goes to them and not to you as a company. So once you start processing those payments, even if you do it unknowingly, which is entirely possible, you become blacklisted, and then you basically have to shut the business down. So, okay. But for us, it was actually more about the opportunity. So the size of the kind of e-commerce category for porn in like 2014 is really only about 10 to 12 billion as a market size. So the total transactions made, that's it. But for general e-commerce websites for retail, it was 304 billion. So just the market size alone didn't warrant us to even need to go down that path. So, which is kind of interesting. Not much of a passion discussion in here, but this visibility thing was a big hot topic in whether or not we wanted to be perceived as a kind of a porn company. So, kind of finally, I have some quick tips for you, and there are things that they're very important, but they're things just to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're building your businesses, as you are, trying to approach different markets. And one of it is just do it. So, not like the Nike slogan, but an example is take like a retail shop that is, on the corner and they're selling cigarettes. They don't really have much differentiation from the shop that's like across the street. And it doesn't really matter what business planning tools they used. It doesn't matter what task management tools they used. All that really matters is that they were able to get a spot, find some people who are going to sell them cigarettes so that they could sell it to consumers, and start their business as quickly as possible so that they could start making money. And I think that's very true for startups as well, is that the media will try and sell this idea of optimizing startups and optimizing e-commerce or optimizing this or that and how to be a rock star entrepreneur. None of that stuff really matters. What really matters is that you start a business and you start making money as quickly as you possibly can so that you can continue that business, because it's a business first and foremost. One thing that has always been a pet peeve of mine, and I used to be this way, is about this concept of a stealth startup. If you go to a venture capitalist and you pitch an idea and you're like, oh, I need you to be all confidential and not share my idea, chances are they've been pitched that idea, same idea, in the last week, and then 10 times before that. Ideas are really great, but what's most important are the people who are going to execute on those ideas, and that's you. You can take anybody else's idea, and if you execute on it, you will win. Whereas the other companies or other people may not be able to execute as good as you. So confidentiality is one thing, and maybe it's an important thing when you get to later points in your business stage. But right now, it's all about execution. It's all about launching a website, launching your application, building your product, and actually getting it in front of people so that they can give you feedback and so that you can incorporate it, and then you can create another product that's even better. So if you're very hot on not telling other people what you're doing, don't do that. You really need to be able to share what you're doing so that you can receive feedback, even if it's just about the idea. But maybe it's the application and you want to get it out as soon as possible so that people can tell you, oh, well, that's kind of important, but maybe if it did this, it would be much more useful for me as a consumer. And finally, be humble. There are a lot of, in the I don't know how to put this nicely. No, let's not say that. There are a lot of people who are overly confident and may not know anything, and who will disregard many people and not be approachable. And these people are not going to be successful just in their relationships, maybe in their businesses, things like that. There's no need for this. And I think it's very important that as a community, everybody helps each other out, because sometimes, say that there's 2 companies in this room who are trying to build a new market, and consumers don't know what that market or what the benefits of that market is. 2 companies together can teach consumers what the benefits of it are, and then individually they can specialize to better serve one aspect of the consumers a little bit better than the other, and compete a little bit, but most importantly, it's building that market. And so it takes partnerships, and it takes working together as a team. Even if you're 2 different companies, it's still important to understand the feedback from the other companies and be able to incorporate that into your own products. So, just what did we cover? Talked about passion. I talked about my silly little Starters Theorem and opportunities. But if you're interested in contacting me, please send me email. This is my personal email, and I'd be happy to try and help you out if I can. In my role at GoPro, I focus on all the other markets that are not extreme sports. And it's usually the tools that make those markets happen. So all of my partners would know these numbers. But usually, though, for like longboard, like downhill, I used to do that, by the way. And one of my friends fell off and got really badly hurt. But we had big hills, so I blame the hill. But it's very, it's an amazing sport. I see kids coming down. We live kind of on a hill, and they come down on this hill with GoPros on their helmets, and it's amazing how fast they're going. But finding the numbers for these markets is tough. You might just call the skateboarding companies and just see what they think they are. Tell them what you're up to, because they might also be interested in using your platform, or maybe advertising, or if you want to give them advertising for free, or just to,
we have these ideas.
yeah, I'd contact them. usually they're pretty small companies, and send email to their support line, or if they have an info at, you know, and usually they're pretty willing to help each other out because they understand that it's a small market, and especially for like skateboarders, it's a small community, and they want to make this something that everybody can do, and so they're all helped out by this type of activity. So when I was doing research for the venture capital firm, there were lots of market reports. There may be an extreme sports marketing or market report now. They're usually pretty expensive. It's like $1,500 per report. Sometimes, though, if you sign up to receive a newsletter, or you sign up for some reason, or you call them and see if they'll maybe give you an old report, that might help as well. But you need to find one that's focusing on the sports market. And there are research companies that focus on sports, and maybe as a niche, extreme sports. Yeah, and just, you know, tell them what you're up to. Say, you know, we don't have any money to spend on the report, but maybe you can help us out. Because those companies are interested in building relationships. And over time, when you do have money to buy those reports, they want you to go to them as opposed to their competitors. So they may be able to help you out. One thing that I've done, I did this for another concept, was to do a Facebook questionnaire where I spent, I think it was $100 in advertising, but I tried to figure out if there was a market for a specific concept. And so I used the advertising filters on Facebook. So I was looking for men 45 to 65 who were interested in classic cars. And then I had a Survey Monkey survey, I guess, that would ask them questions. And then I got 100 people to fill out this questionnaire, and within 2 days I figured out that there was no market for what I was trying to do. So that might be another way, is like looking at extreme sports and doing a survey like that for people that you may never be able to access. And it's surprising that people will actually click on these ads on Facebook, and it says, like, I think my ad said, are you interested in vintage and classic cars? We're building a new service, and we want to learn more about you. And people clicked on this. Like, who knew? So, yeah, that may be another way. We have a program called Live It, Eat It, Love It, which on Thursday from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, you are allowed to go out and just use the products. And so you go for a run, or you go surfing, or you go skydiving, or you do bicycle riding, whatever it is. But the idea is that you will collect the content, you will use it, and then you will post it up to YouTube. And so we have the whole company doing this. So it's about 1,500 people who participate in this program. And part of it is we use unreleased features and provide feedback about that. So that's one path. Another is our support group. The support group is very important to us, and every question or every inquiry that comes in to customer support goes directly to the product organization, and so they have access to all of that information. And then the support group prepares quarterly and I think monthly reports about the problems that people are having at that time, so that they can quickly fix things, or they can incorporate it into a future product. Another is Nick, our founder and CEO. He's kind of our chief product officer. And so any of the product decisions go through him. And so a lot of times the different product managers will prepare a business case and present a feature directly to him, and then he will say yes or no. And so ultimately, any of the features that will go to him first, and then he curates. Yeah, which is it's a blessing, but it's also a real pain in the ass sometimes.